Got it. Anyway, this is the book I want to talk about. So this Modern Art Cookbook I did 2 years ago, and it took, get this, 3 years to get the permissions for the recipes which come from, you know, Matisse and Mallarmé and Cézanne and so forth and so on. But the problem was getting the permissions, and I won't dwell on that, except to say that if you ever do a book, as Wendy knows, what you have to worry about, maybe first and certainly longest and certainly most importantly is the permissions. Forget what you're going to say. If you don't have the permission, you can't do it. And I will just tell you that I did a biography of Salvador Dali, whose writing I like more than his art, and that's a whole other thing. But I did it not because I like his face, but because I like his writing. And one day before the book was going into absolute final proof, I still didn't have permission from the Dali estate to use the images. So I said, right, so I guess we'll just have pictures of Dali. I mean, like, who cares about his art? And then they panicked in Spain, and they got through the next day. But it was like, that's the kind of thing you don't want to particularly get involved in. Okay, I'm here to do this. So the reason I did this book, and let me just start with this because this is the real reason, is that my grandmother, who was a painter, said to me, if you go to any museum, you can only say 3 works of art. So every time I went to the Met or anywhere else, I had to choose the works of art first, because otherwise I was going to get stuck with Rosa Bonheur or somebody now I like, but then I didn't. And so I had to choose. And my grandmother had this, that ginger jar. See that ginger pot in the middle? My grandmother had one like that, and I thought, gee, this is wonderful. Me and my grandmommy, we can go to the Met and we can look and see this thing. And then eggplant. And then you thought, is there any recipe with ginger and eggplant? I couldn't find one anywhere. And then, right when this book was coming out, somebody said to me, well, of course, we in Collioure always put ginger with our eggplant. So it's kind of like, you know, serendipity that you find what you really want to talk about. So because of this, I did the cookbook. Because what I wanted to do was reading in the kitchen, and a lot of the stuff is reading about what you will be cooking. I mean, it's more interesting to me to be reading about it in a way than cooking it. I like to read the recipes and sometimes have someone else cook them. But that's just the way that is. Okay. So let me just say that, of course, you can have all these wonderful still lives. You don't have to cook everything from them. I find Chardin, the objects, the beautiful copper, are so wonderful that I wanted to do a whole thing in here on what are the beautiful things to cook in. I didn't do that because there wasn't room, and besides, you know, there it is. You can just look at the Chardin. I didn't have anything to say about it except to say what you cook in Provence and a Thion, and so I went on and on. Then I thought, this is not something to go on and on about. So I'll just show you how beautiful that is. How beautiful it is that things fall off the table, fall into your space, and that's what I really cared a lot about. This is a friend of mine, and I was amused at something I will show you later. The young guy said to me, who are the people in your cookbook so that you can use some of my art? I said, well, there's Cézanne and, you know, Matisse and, you know, Van Gogh and so. He said, and Jacob Collins. He said, Jacob Collins? I will be in it. So Jacob Collins, who is like the age of my son, he's like, what, 48 or something. This is his very, very beautiful, I think, cheese. And then everything that he does sells immediately for much more than any of us could pay for a work of art. It seems very remarkable to me. So I'm showing you this because of course, Proust, because you know the whole story about the bunch of asparagus, and he had been commissioned by Frucy, the friend of Proust, to do a bunch of asparagus, and he felt he was overpaid, so then he sent the other asparagus. So the point was about using the asparagus, I had to find a perfect recipe that would be, you know, perfect for that. So I gave a Georgia O'Keeffe recipe, which I'll give to you. It's the least complicated you can imagine. You take a bunch of asparagus. She grew them, then she went out and picked them. Butter or oil, herb salt, and freshly ground pepper. Are you ready for this? It's a really complicated recipe. You wash the asparagus, you remove the sand, you cut the woody part of the stems off, you keep the asparagus in long pieces, you steam or saute it, and that's it. So none of the recipes are much shorter than this. This is pretty short. And I don't do the Julia Child sort of thing, see page 453 where you've made the sauce that you're going to serve on page 95. I don't, it's not that kind of book, happy to say. And because I love oysters and I'm married to somebody who is passionate about oysters and we go to the oyster bar in Grand Central all the time, I have a lot of recipes about oysters. So